Advisors or panelists on the line. When you are ready to begin the presentation, press the Start Broadcast button on the GoToWebinar control panel to allow all attendees to hear you. This system will notify you once you begin your broadcast. The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning. This is Eric Seymour with the National Weather Service in Wakefield with your Thursday morning weather briefing. Want to start off with kind of some current conditions where we are. So we're looking at the current satellite image across the area. We did have some rain shower activity move through early this morning. We think that was associated with a warm front that's lifting back to the north, heading up into Maryland right now. And you can see there's still quite a bit of cloud cover that's been left behind across central Virginia over into the Virginia Tidewater. But the thing that we're seeing, the trend that we're seeing a lot of kind of breaking up of that cloud cover now. And really, as we get in the afternoon, we are expecting quite a bit of sunshine to come back out and allow for more heating, things of that nature. And it could set the stage for a few more showers and thunderstorms to impact the area. And we'll talk about that here in a couple of minutes. Wanted to bring up what the current observations are across the area. Generally, we've gotten up into the upper 70s to lower 80s across the area now. But the thing I want you to really kind of take notice of is notice the temperatures that are in blue. Those are the dew points. Gives us an idea of how much humidity is in the air. Generally speaking, we're seeing a lot of mid 70s to even some upper 70s type values now across the area. That's indicative of us getting back into that warm, hot, humid air mass that's just been to the south of us for the last day or so. That's moving back north, and it really should end up providing the fuel for the afternoon shower and thunderstorm activity. So let's go ahead and let's dive into the briefing slides, and we'll talk about the different impacts that we're expecting. Looking at the overall weather pattern for the next 4 or 5 days, you can see today we start off with that kind of that warm front. At this point, I think that warm front's probably more up closer to the Virginia-Maryland line, heading more up into St. Mary's County, maybe getting up into the lower Maryland Eastern Shore. So I think good parts of our area now, especially Richmond South, we're back into that warm sector. We're into that hot, humid air mass. And once these clouds go away, we're going to see that temperatures really bump up. As we move through Friday into through the weekend, this system that's kind of impacting us today kind of pulls through. Don't really, maybe we get a little bit of a humidity, drop in humidity tomorrow. So maybe we get a little bit of relief there. Temperature wise, still look like we're going to be pretty warm. We're really waiting for this front that's up to the north across Indiana, Ohio, New York to eventually come down into us. So as we get into Saturday, we see that front making slow progress through. And then hopefully by Sunday, we get the boundary south of the area heading down into the Carolinas. And then by Monday, actually getting well down into portions of Georgia. And the feature that's kind of pushing us this large area of high pressure that's kind of been up over the Great Lakes, Hudson Bay, is now going to be kind of pushing down the eastern seaboard. So that gets us a little bit of temperature and humidity relief as we head into early next week. So looking at today, what we're dealing with today, we are dealing with potential for some severe storms. And really, this is kind of north of where that warm front is. So again, I think you're really looking, northern neck of Virginia, lower Maryland Eastern Shore, maybe parts of the Virginia portion of the Delmarva could see some stronger storms. Again, we're looking, kind of in that late afternoon, early evening time frame of seeing those storms kind of roll through. And again, the biggest threat with those would be some gusty winds at this point. This kind of a little bit of a simulated timing on what we're looking at. So somewhere this afternoon, kind of between 3, 5 o'clock, we see some activity developing. Initially, it'll develop kind of on the higher terrain up across portions of the Shenandoah Valley. Starts to come kind of eastward, eventually turning and dropping southeastward, moving through the I-95 corridor, probably somewhere between 3 and 5. As we get toward the 5 to 7 time period, we're getting it to move across the bay into portions of Dorchester County, coming down into the northern neck, maybe clipping part of the middle peninsula as its way down. And then eventually we get later in the evening, that 7, 8 o'clock time frame, it's moving through the portions of the Delmarva and then heading out to sea. So that's really kind of where we think the best focus is. Doesn't mean we can't have a storm south of Richmond, south central Virginia into the Tidewater, things of that nature. Looks like anything that forms there would be more isolated, not necessarily as organized as to the north. So, looking at, not only are we dealing with the threat for severe weather, the gusty winds, also could see some heavier rainfall. Generally speaking, you're probably talking a quarter to half inch if you average it all together across the whole area. But we know with how these storms form, you get some pockets in there where you get a little bit more rainfall. So you could see some locations that maybe get up to an inch, maybe an inch and a half of rain as they go through. But the good thing is, it does look like these areas of storms that are going to be forming will be moving. So we're not expecting them to be slow movers or to train over where you get multiple storms going over top the same area. We're not really anticipating that. So it does help lessen the flood threat a little bit. But again, we're dealing with an environment that's extremely humid. So you could see some brief heavy rainfall, and it could quickly, give you an inch to maybe an inch and a half of rain as things are moving through. But again, that would be fairly localized. Um, when we start looking at the precip for kind of the next 7-day period, the bulk of it is between now and Saturday. So we looked at what was in the day one graphic earlier. What I want to pull in right now is the kind of the day three graphic for you to be able to take a look at. And so we get to Saturday again. Precip should be a little bit more widespread. I think anything tomorrow is fairly isolated. But again, area wide on Saturday, we could see a quarter to a half inch, maybe a little bit more as you get down along the coast. But again, you're dealing with the similar scenarios today that any one of those storms that does form, you could get some locally higher amounts, and that's typical for the summertime pattern. So we'll kind of keep that in mind. And then as we look at the heavy rainfall potential for any kind of excessive rainfall, the target area again is to our north. I think we've got this marginal getting down close to Richmond, but really, realistically, the heavy rainfall with the storm should be farther to the north. So could we see some isolated flooding across parts of the northern neck, maybe over in the lower Maryland Eastern Shore? Yeah, but again, the thing is, the storms do look like they're moving, so that may kind of help weaken this threat just a little bit. We do have a heat advisory in effect for today across portions of Northeast North Carolina. When we look at the kind of the forecast and then the humidity, we were looking at those dew point values earlier, getting back up into the mid 70s, maybe in a few locations a little bit higher than that. Once the clouds burn off and we are able to get the temperatures to start to warm up, we're only talking having to go up about 10, 12 degrees from where we are right now to hit these high temperatures. We get that sun out there, we should be able to get there. And with the humidity in place, you're talking heat index values, exceeding 105 in the southeast, but you may even see some values getting up to 105, especially Franklin, Emporia, all the way over to Norfolk and South Central. So could see values, some sporadic values getting up even a little bit higher, a little bit farther to the north. So really anything probably east of I-95, south of 64. Really could be seeing some of these triple-digit heat index values. Again, not as bad as we had last week, but still, for anybody who's outside working, things like that, it could be, getting into some of those, heat-related illnesses. So just kind of keep that in mind, that, there could be some issues with the heat today. As we look at the next few days, things just a touch cooler tomorrow, and that's really kind of the little bit of the humidity maybe backing off a little bit. But generally speaking, we're still looking at those same areas, seeing heat index values of 100 to 105. So, we've been dealing with this heat really for about 8 to 10 days now. It's still a lingering impact out there. We do start to see some improvement as we get into Saturday. Temperatures drop off a little bit. Humidity's not quite as bad. And then as we get into Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, things really back off quite a bit. So that'll be a good thing. And as you look at the temperatures that we're forecasting for Sunday, Monday, even into Tuesday, we're back into the 80s, even low 80s for parts of the area on Sunday and Monday. So, that's really going to help drop those heat index values down and give us a little bit of a break. Even seeing some overnight lows getting down into the 60s. So, that kind of just give us a little chance to reprieve from the normal summertime temperatures. And again, your chances of rain really increasing Sunday morning into the afternoon hours seems to be the best time period. Saturday into Sunday. That's really that best time frame for seeing that next chance of rainfall. Do have a little bit of a chance for some potential coastal flooding. It's just kind of some nuisance minor type value. So, kind of those favored locations that see some higher water at high tides could be seeing that over the next few days. And looking at some of the kind of select graphics in the upper bay, Louisetta, we got a high tide tonight getting up close to minor. You got the same thing at Bishop's Head kind of lingering around that for several high tide cycles in a row. Again, those favored locations seeing a little bit of an increase in water level, but nothing into the point that we'd be issuing a warning. But just keep in mind that some of those favored locations that sometimes do have issues with coastal flooding. Those low-lying areas could see some water around high tide each of the next few days. Looking ahead for the next 6 to 10 day, does look like from a temperature standpoint, most of the warning area gets kind of back to near normal values. So near normal values this time of the year, upper 80s, low 90s, typical summertime values. So that's when you're averaging over that 5-day period. That's what we're looking at. The latter portion of next week into the weekend, and then precip wise, most locations being near normal. Maybe a little bit more active across the south for some heavier rainfall. All right, drought monitor wise, things have improved just a touch. Seeing a little bit of improvement down here in Chesapeake, Virginia Beach, getting out of the drought and into abnormally dry conditions. We've also seen a few, some slight changes from D2 to D1 in a few locations across portions of the central part of Virginia. So getting a little bit of help. We've had quite a bit of some pockets of rainfall across the area. And this is a map of the last 7 days precip, and this is radar estimated. So when you're looking at that, you're seeing some pockets of these yellows, even the beige and the kind of the oranges. You're looking anywhere from 2 to 5 inches of rainfall in those three color areas when you put them together. So we've had some pockets of heavier rainfall. Not everybody's seen it. You've had some areas in there that you get portions of Sussex County where really haven't had a whole lot. You're talking generally, less than a half of an inch. So you've had a few, a lot of folks have had at least a half inch, maybe more, but you still have some of these pockets where you really haven't had a whole lot of rain, especially you get down the Roanoke Basin, down toward Carr Lake, where haven't had a rainfall, and they're really in need of some rainfall down there. So, so again, we're seeing some modest improvements in some locations, but not everywhere. And that's typical with the summertime thunderstorm patterns. You kind of have the haves and the have-nots. But just keep in mind that generally speaking, during a week right now, you're between 3/4 of an inch and an inch of rain is what is needed just to reach normal values. So it's going to take quite a bit of rainfall to make up for the dry weather we've had for the last, kind of like last 4 to 6 months. And when you look at this right now, I think this line hits it really well. You're talking 8 to 12 inches of rain needed in the next 30 days to end the drought. That would be a lot of rainfall. You'd be talking anything over 10 to 12 inches. In a lot of cases, those would be exceeding a monthly record type of a rainfall. So we've got a lot of rain we're going to need in order to get this drought back out of here. So it's going to take some time. But at least we're seeing some rain now, whereas previously we'd seen a lot of dry weather without much rainfall at all. So we'll take the things that we're getting right now. All right. So from a tropical standpoint, right now there's nothing going on from a tropical nature. Nothing expected next 7 days. This is pretty indicative of what we're seeing with El Nino. El Nino is developing, and I know we just received word yesterday that it's strengthening and developing as they were anticipating. So with the El Nino going on, it's probably going to limit the activity in the tropics in the Atlantic, not kill it. There'll still be some activity out there at some point during the next during the season here, but just not what we've seen over the last really seems like the last 10-15 years. We've had quite a few seasons that have been highly active with 20 plus storms. This year does not look like it's going to go that direction. All right, so just wrapping things up today, definitely dealing with the risk of thunderstorm activity. Once we get the clouds out of here and we heat up, it's kind of going to set the stage for the instability for the storms to form. And again, we're looking kind of that 4 p.m. to 11 p.m. window is kind of the target zone right now, with the best risk really being up to the north, probably more the northern neck, parts of the Delmarva being under the gun, with the best chance of seeing some of these storms. Heat advisory in effect in the southeast, and we talked about how even up toward Richmond could see heat index values up to 100 degrees this afternoon. A little bit less chance Friday, more showers and storms on Saturday, with some locally heavy rainfall, and then early next week things looking from a weather standpoint a little bit cooler, a little bit drier, so a little bit of a break from the heat and humidity that we've had over the last couple of weeks. So that's all for the forecast for today. If you have any questions, please reach out to us here at the Wakefield office, either via Slack or send us, give us a phone call. We'll be happy to answer any of your questions. You guys have a great weekend. We'll talk to you Monday.